And then I shared it with the whole organization and said, this is what we're going to be doing now. And all of you business people who haven't been coding are going to learn how to do this.
Sebastian, it's great to have you chatting with Upstarts. We're focused on the startup ecosystem, and Klarna is a startup, I think, at heart still, even though you've been doing this for a long time.
I feel that way, at least. Yes.
There's no real definition. I think it's more of a spirit, and I think Klarna also embodies an upstart mentality as well. You guys have sort of helped pioneer a category and had real ups and downs to kind of get to this point. So, it's really a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So it was a great experiment that we got to get questions from a lot of our Upstarts readers from across the globe, Europe and the US mostly, but anywhere, to ask you questions around a bunch of subjects.
Cool.
The first one is going to go back to your childhood, or at least growing up.
Yeah.
One of our readers, Eleanor, wrote in that she had heard that you studied IKEA or Walmart, or were sort of fascinated with these big box stores at some point in your life.
Yeah.
And that maybe there were lessons that helped you in business from that. Maybe there were also lessons that were completely irrelevant and not helpful to Klarna. So I'd love you to maybe give me a little context there and one of each.
Sure. But I think that, it is kind of odd, right? Because my parents were immigrants, and they moved from Polish communism at that point of time because they wanted a different future, economical future. But my father always wanted me to become a doctor because he wanted to be a doctor, and he ended up being an immigrant, working as a cab driver and being unemployed, and struggled quite a lot to adopt to Swedish society. Say my mom was also, so we didn't have that much money. We'd run out of money, and I remember eating pancakes every day, and I thought it was fantastic, but it turned out that was the only thing we had was flour and milk and stuff to make pancakes.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, already as a kid, I just always was intrigued and inspired by the idea of running a business. So it was actually the business thing that inspired me. And I remember very early on, IKEA at this point in time, obviously this kind of pride of Sweden, growing into more markets, becoming a Hollywood phenomena, being on movies. And Ingvar Kamprad, this also fantastic entrepreneur who started in, the 50s, with his mail order business that turned into this behemoth. I mean, for a while they even said he was the richest man in the world, even though he, in order to avoid taxes, had given it all away to a foundation. But so I think that, and same with Sam Walton, right? But even I would also say the other one that was at that point of time a huge inspiration for me was Richard Branson. And I would read his book about how he started Virgin and stuff like that.
I got to meet Richard for the first time last week.
He's such a...
I did a talk on the back of a Virgin cruise ship, which is a little more interesting than a conference room, I have to say.
That's true.
But, yeah.
No, I met him actually by coincidence in his property in Morocco. And he was so lovely and so friendly, and it was just a big thing for me to meet my my teenage idol. And other people are soccer players or whatever, absolutely. And I was like, oh, Richard Branson and Ingvar Kamprad.
But was it just as an entrepreneur that you admired?
No, so I don't know why, but I always just had this I thought business was interesting. I remember this in this. I'll give you a fun example. At this point in time, when I'm 12, 13 or whatever, Sweden has just decided that actually, can you imagine? We're going to have private radio station and not just public, run by the government. And so there's this local radio station in my hometown with 200,000 people. And I just thought that their programming sucked and that they weren't making enough money. And so I actually wrote down a business plan for my local radio station. And I tried to call them when I was 13 and guys, you should be doing this. And this is kind of the shows you could have. I was I don't know why. I was just I was crazy that way. And there was always some ideas we would start a business with some friends, try to sell something, whatever it was. And I just always found it very, very interesting and fascinating. And the adventure of running a business was to me very, very exciting.
What would you say has been the closest port or sort of best lesson from non-tech businesses that maybe you admire to then running a tech company all these years later?
No, I would still say that there's been a lot. I think from Sam Walton and reading his book, and I said, because we now actually do business with Walmart, which is a fantastic privilege, and I'm extremely proud of it. Part of that was that I got the opportunity to go to Bentonville, Arkansas, and unfortunately the museum was refurbishing. So while I was walking around the streets of Bentonville, I was just let me find something related to Sam Walton, and it turns out the only thing I could find was his grave in the cemetery. And so I go there, and interesting enough, people are superstitious, so they put dollar bills on his grave. So there's tons of money on his grave. But I'll tell you, people ask me about the IPO and ringing the bell. I'm sure all that's going to be really cool and it's a fantastic experience. But for me personally, emotionally, after being this kid from this small city in Stockholm, to actually stand in Bentonville on Sam Walton's grave and realize that I will now have the opportunity to work with the biggest retailer in the world that I've always been the biggest fan of, like that to me emotionally is just a different level, it's just like such a cool thing. And to what I learned from Walmart, what I find very, very interesting about IKEA and Walmart, that as these businesses, as Ingvar and Sam and the others, as they started getting scale and made profits, they decided to not just keep all of that for themselves, but actually reinvest it. And not only reinvest it, but share some of the benefits they created in higher quality and lower prices. And the key thing is, if you do that in a consistent and committed way for decades, you create something that's unstoppable, right? Which is IKEA or Walmart. Because customers just grow such an affection and preference, they realize that you are, strongly committed to their cause. So to me, one key learning from those traditional businesses, like when you start making a lot of money, give it back to your customers in lower prices, more efficiency, which isn't really something you could argue tech has done much. Neither banks, for that sake, have done that. They mostly kept the profits for themselves. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would say is more recent is just customer obsession. And everyone talks about this and everyone's like, oh, we're customer obsessed, so important to be customer obsessed. But I used to listen to Sarayan, who was the guy who was running Tesco, took Tesco from, they were at the ropes in the UK, and then he reinvigorated it and made a fantastic story out of it. And he said, like, everything is about making the customer happy. Even when people would be like, in finance, we need a new accounting software, he would go and ask them, like, how does this help our customers, right? And I think that in the last year, the tree thing from other businesses that are not tech, it's been just like, how do we obsess about the customer? How do we make sure we talk to the customer as often as possible, that we truly understand what they want from us, and just obsess about making their experience better? I think those are the things that I don't feel get mentioned as often in like tech, which is like technology, software, AI, blah, blah, all that's great. But, customers, customer obsession.
So Sebastian, I think a lot of Upstarts readers know the answer to this, but this question came in because someone just said, it feels like my understanding of Klarna is out of date. What the heck is Klarna anymore? Is it a bunch of things? Is it one thing? Do you really think like the business is still mainly one thing, or how do you think about?
I would actually say, look, I think one of my happiest part of this investor roadshow has been how little I heard the word buy now, pay later. Because it is both a blessing and a curse to the company. So it is a blessing in the sense that, especially in the US, it really opened up the market. It created market awareness, demand, customer like it and enjoy the product. The curse is obviously that people think it's the only thing we do. When in Europe, a lot of our customers knows that we do so much more. And I think that the true objective of Klarna was set in 2015, so about 10 years ago. I started was 20 years ago, I was 23. But when my second co-founder left in 15, we had this like serious moment where we sat down and say, where are we taking this business? And at that point of time, we had been trying to compete with Stripe and Adyen, but Collison was just beating the crap out of us. And so was Peter and the people at Adyen. And we're like, nah, that's not a good idea. Let's do something different. And we said, okay, if we can't win on the merchant side, perhaps we can win on the consumer side. And we said, okay, what about retail banking? What about offering kind of the next generation of digital financial services, and what will they look like and what will they feel like? And we came up with this idea that like in the future will be a digital financial assistant, wakes you up in the morning, tells you I've analyzed your mortgage, I could save you $100 by switching from A to B, and the only thing you need to do, no paperwork, just say yes, right? We said, okay, that sounds like it's going to happen. Like it's like self-driving cars. I don't know when, but eventually. And then that's going to make a major difference for banking services, because unfortunately, retail banking is built on the idea that you don't want to switch, that you don't have the energy to switch. And as a consequence of that, they can charge you more, they can offer you worse services, they don't have to care that much, despite there's officially so much competition. And this just means that as AI and these technologies advance, your ability to switch simplistically and do that will just become much, more. And as a consequence of that, people will be more open and try new things and so forth. And banking will have to be competing about truly creating value for your customers. So that was kind of the idea in 15. And then as everything else, you're like, okay, but how do we get there? What do we do? And ever since, one of the things we knew was like, we need to be global. We need to be in a lot of markets. We need to have a lot of consumers. Just a few won't be enough if we want to invest in this. So those have been kind of the things that we've been pursuing ever since. But today, it very much depends on who you ask. We were sitting with one of these investors, and she was telling me, well, I use Klarna because I'm a sneaker fan. I was like, what do you mean? Well, I use the app because I can go in and search and find sneakers at different retailers, and I can find the different prices and different inventories. So she's using us as a product search engine, right? While somebody else, we met a fantastic guy in the reception when we were checking in, and he's like, oh, you're from Klarna? We're like, yes. It's like, do you use it? I use it all the time. It's the best. It's like, so what could we do better? I want to get the card. We've signed up 700,000 people in the first 6 weeks in the US for the card, and we have 5 million people on the waiting list. So, like, people tend to use it, but it's all obviously around retail banking, around payments, around day-to-day spending. So the way I think about it is like, if I can help people save time, if I can help them save money, or if I can help them feel in control of their finances, we're doing a good thing. And if you look at just the amount of interest we're saving people for 0% interest on buy now, pay later compared to a credit card where people revolve, somebody told me today, Americans have 1.3 trillion in outstanding credit card debt, paying like 20-30% interest on it. That's quite expensive. That's a lot of money. Yeah. So if you can help on that, fantastic. So it's all about that everyday spending, right?
It must be cool to meet these different personas. With Upstarts, it's interesting. Our ICP is founders.
Yeah.
My feeling is that founders are the heartbeat of the startup ecosystem. Big surprise. And if you can be credible with founders, the VCs, the bankers, the lawyers, they'll pay attention too.
Yeah.
But if the founders think you're shit, everyone else will.
Eventually, yes.
Who's the ICP for Klarna? Who's the tastemaker or the key customer that you always need to be resonating with?
But I think it is that one. I think it is it's more a she than a he, to be honest. They're probably in their early 30s. I meet them all the time and they kind of all over the country. McKinsey called them self-aware avoiders, which means that they have had poor experience with credit cards. They think it's the product of the devil, and they are conscious about their economy. Like, one of the favorite conversations I ever had was a woman that age who told me her mom was bugging her because it says in the press that buy now pay later is bad, and she was asking, are you using that bad thing called Klarna? And she goes, but Mom, what about your credit card? How much credit card debt do you have? And I was like, Mom, well, I have $4,000 on my credit card. And what are you paying on it? Like 25%. And so the daughter was like, look.
The internet did go crazy that when someone was saying, I forget if it was you guys or someone else, but it was buy now, pay later a burrito.
Yes.
People were like, maybe we've gone a little too far with that.
and the funny thing is that obviously, we got a lot of memes like that. Obviously, DoorDash didn't sign Klarna to do financing on burritos. They're using us because in Europe, they know that we are like PayPal. It's a payment method where you can use it for debit and credit and all types of purchases. But the truth is also, to be fair, which nobody talks about, before Klarna, people were buying burritos on credit cards and revolving. So, it's not like it's necessarily a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
But it's true. So, that's fine. But that's what I said also, that to somebody, I was talking to the head of payments at OpenAI. And I said, you should do payments Klarna with subscriptions. And he said, why would I do buy now pay later for subscriptions? And I'm like, okay, let's go back here. Spotify, Disney Plus, like the amount of partners we work with where they use us for subscription payments is huge, but it's just not what we're associated with yet in the US. It's very much buy now pay later, and in Europe people know that we do so many more things. We have a card, you can have a positive balance, we have tons of people using us as a way to find new products, search for products. I mean, there's just a lot.
So that is, I think, one of the number one questions readers had was sort of, is Klarna a business where when we're in a troubled market or the economy is tough, Klarna helps me stretch my budget or feel better about purchases, kind of still coming from that core buy now, pay later identity. Is Klarna like a business that starts with people maybe trying to save money or be cautious in a tough time, or is it also equally exciting in a booming time? How do you think about that?
I think the key thing is that there's a lot of people, like the amount of times I read in the press and it says like, Klarna's a good business, but I wonder how it's going to fare in a recession. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been here for 20 years. I've gone through like 5 recessions. How many recessions do I need to take this business through before I stop hearing about that? Like, the truth is that what we do is we do not do like credit cards. We don't encourage you to get 4,000 or 5,000 in revolving. Our average outstanding balance, the amount of money that people owe us, is $100, and they pay it back in 6 weeks. So what that means is that in a recession, if we even tighten up our underwriting a little bit and be a little bit even more like restrictive in who we give credit to, in 6 weeks, more than half of our balance sheet, of all the debt on our balance sheet, is underwritten by the new standards. When a typical bank faces a recession and they change maybe even the underwriting and they're a little bit more restrictive, it takes them years to heal that balance sheet by their new standards. And so Klarna is an extremely recession-proof business, despite what everyone says in the press and misunderstands, because they just don't get into the details and don't truly understand how we do it. We're also very thoughtful about the fact that we take a credit decision for every purchase you do. So with your credit card, you just get a credit decision, you can rack up debt. But with us, for every purchase you do, we take a decision. Does this make sense? Is this thoughtful? So it's very different in that sense. And I think that the value of Klarna is as much in the recession as in boom years. Because if you take an example, when we had, people want to get away from the classical credit cards and so forth. And that's true when there's boom years, but it's also true when interest rate went up. Obviously the attractiveness of 0% interest is even higher, right? So people will even shift to this or use this. So I think that there's pros and cons, right? Like with the business in both sides, but I think it's actually slightly unrelated.
Have you always felt good about people using Klarna responsibly, or was there a moment where you had to maybe fine-tune things or get the balance right? Because at least in America, when people do think of credit card companies, they think, okay, on the one hand, you have millennials like me who are chasing points like crazy.
Yeah.
And then you have people who maybe are struggling more where the credit card company is making money because of missed payments and sort of high interest and sort of, it doesn't feel as good, I think, to us as consumers. And I'm curious, in your world, how you guys keep feeling good about how you guys make money.
It's a great question, and I think it's actually one that's been underreported. Because when we launched this business 20 years ago, right? We, at that point in time, we were just like, hey, you know what? People can't shop online. In Sweden, credit cards and debit cards worked really poorly online. A lot of friction entering numbers and stuff. And we were just like, let's make it better. Let's make this work better. But then we looked at how does banks make money? Like, oh, they charge late fees, they charge interest rate. Let's do that. Wow, it makes a lot of money. Let's charge more of it, right? And so the point is, it's not like we woke up with some social idea that we were going to revolutionize the credit industry. We just took the bank's freaking business model, made it digital, and said, let's go, right? Until one day, and I remember this vividly, this is a few years into the business, I'm sitting and looking at a forecast, and I'm like, what's that revenue line that's growing so much? What is that? And I was like, wow, that's late fees. And then I asked myself, like, wow, that's a big number. If I divide that late fees by every customer, how much is that? And I was like, whoa. And then I realized this is not sustainable, right? I mean, and that's kind of because we hadn't thought about these things. There wasn't even a big discussion back then. You have to remember 2005, people are still, drinking alcohol in offices and, all of that, all of the other stuff hadn't happened yet. It was a very different thing, right? Everyone's just like, how do you maximize revenue of your customer base,
I wrote the first article about WeWork, so
yeah, exactly. No, so it was very different. But so when I'm facing that revenue line, looking at those late fees, so what to me became clear though was like, this won't scale, right? And then you have to ask yourself as a founder, you have two options, right? Either you're like, uh-oh, not my problem, let's sell. I'm out. You know, like, or you're like, oh, but maybe I can figure out a better way, right? And at that point of time, we started experimenting, and it was also, you know, not well known outside Sweden, but in Sweden, we had a small glitch, which was that we had always sent these reminders when you were late. They were sent with physical mail, and the original like payments instruction was sent with physical mail because those were the days. And then at this point in time, we were like, yeah, but the market is mature now. Let's do email instead. The only thing we hadn't checked was that we went as a consequentially from sending like a few thousand emails to sending 100,000 emails, and then Gmail spam filters and everything just blocked us, and suddenly our late fees are through the roof, and we're like, what's going on? And it was like people didn't get any payments instruction, couldn't pay us, and then that actually we lost a lot of trust among Swedish consumers. They were like, oh, they're trying to optimize the revenue, they're trying to, you know, get as much late fees as possible, and it was a big awakening for us as a company. And again, like my co-founder left at that point in time. He was like, oh, I don't know, like, you know, this is bad and stuff like that. But I felt like, no, I want to make this better. I want to change this and fix this, right? I want to find a business model that doesn't work that way. And ever since then, we started reducing our late fees dependencies. We also, for example, we used to do revolving, which I think is a very bad thing for consumers. When we took revolving out, eventually in 2021, it took a few years. But when we did it, we lost $100 million in revenue.
Wow.
That was what we had to wipe out. And I was very happy. Those were the happy days when, you know, $50 billion valuations, everything's up. So none of our investors like noticed when I like swiped out $100 million of revenue, right? But I think it was the right thing for the company. And I was very inspired by Nick from Afterpay that was actually very dedicated to this idea from the very beginning, that like no interest, be very, very thoughtful. And he also inspired me to take that decision. And the point is that we reduced late fees and all that. So for sure, it was not like we woke up as the good guys. We just copied what the banks were doing, and we're like, no problem, let's just do what they do. Apparently society accepts what banks do, so they must accept what we're going to do. And that's fine, we're just going to do it digital. But then over time, we're like, but it turns out the banks aren't doing everything in a very nice way. There's tons of tricks. You can go watch like Netflix, Credit Cards Explains, and you'll see like, you know, those things. So then we started changing, and we said, wouldn't it be even more powerful if we would find a model that is friendlier to consumers, but still offers these products and services? And then, obviously, at the very end of it, I do end up sometimes in a conversation with somebody who's like, no, you should not use credit cards, you should not use credit for consumption, the only thing you maybe accept is a mortgage. And that's it. Like, yeah, I'm not going to win that debate. Like, I'm out. Like, I've lost the debate, right?
Everyone there.
No, exactly. So, like, and I'm very honest with people. I say to politicians, look, I'm fighting fire with fire. I'm fighting credit with credit. I just think this is a healthier credit than the one that exists. So I think if 10 years from now, less people have credit cards, more people have debit and use buy now, pay later, I think we're a better society, right? And that's, but I like that way to approach reality, because I think sometimes I was watching, you know, The Dragon's Den last time, and they were like very tough on some founders that came in and said like, our business is all about doing good. And it was like, do good through doing business, right? They were trying to kind of coach them in that. And I think in 2020 and so forth, there was a little bit of loss to that, where people were just like, I'm going to make a better world. Like, but you make a better world by making businesses that works, that actually, you know, do a difference. And that's why I think we do with Klarna, like we do a service that is more cost efficient, that's smarter, more financially controllable, but it's still credit. And if we give up, somebody else is going to swoop in and offer a bad credit to that person that's going to be more expensive that they're going to pay for. So from that perspective, I think we are doing society something good, right? Like in my world, and I don't understand not everyone's going to agree with that, that's fine. But I think it's a better product for society than the one that exists as we grow it and make it successful.
Well, let's jump from one controversial position to maybe the next one, which is the banks are now getting involved with stablecoins.
Right.
Crypto is having a resurgence. One of our readers with Upstarts was very curious, do you see crypto-based credit networks and stablecoins as unlocking new opportunities for Klarna, or does it present some sort of existential threat that people build a new Klarna that's crypto native?
Both. I think that I have been very honest, and I've told our investors as well, is that one has to recognize, if you think about it, sending an email, how much does that cost you? $0.
Yeah.
Right? Now, is it really free of charge? No, somewhere there's a server in Google's Gmail whatever, and it probably cost a
I
fraction
was
of
going
a
to say,
cent.
as a small business now, I know how much I pay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not entirely free, to be honest, but it's very, very low cost. What's the difference between that and sending money? Very, very low. Yeah, a little bit of extra security, this and that, whatever, but in essence, it's just bits moving on computers. So the point is, payments is going to go towards a much lower cost environment. And especially in US, where you have not regulated interchange. You have to remember, I'm from Europe, where debit costs 20 bips, credit 40 bips. In the US, a credit card transaction costs 200. And a debit is supposed to be regulated, but all the banks are circumventing it by creating subsidiaries.
But we have rewards points.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what rewards points.
Which interestingly, I think it was the Boston Bank who showcased that credit cards are probably the most efficient wealth redistribution program in the world, because it takes actually $400 from $40 per low-income household, and through loyalty points and higher cost in grocery stores, retransform that into $400 into high net worth homes or high houses. So it is a very not necessarily favorable system for everyone. But the point is that so I think from our side, what I'm telling investors is I sincerely believe that with with both stable coins, crypto, AI, and all these things, this market is in such excess profits. The excess profits that exist in banking, they are unlimited. That's why investors love banking stock, because they're like, wow, it's awesome, you're making a lot of money, and it's it's always continues to make money, and but the truth is, it has to come down.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm telling my investors is that, look, your bet on Klarna is a bet that it will come down. I am pushing Visa and MasterCard in the US to get lower fees. We're gonna compete as a third-party network. We're gonna try to create pressure on this. With the use of stablecoins, but also with our brand awareness and with the preference and all the other things, and try to create some competitive pressure, and it's going to push the fees down. So a investor bets on Klarna because they think we can take a bigger piece of a smaller pie. It's still a bigger piece than what we have today as a Klarna investor, right? But the whole pie will shrink. It is not feasible for society to pay this much for payments. You think about the 200 basis points that you pay for a credit card. What you forget is, on the other hand, there's also people revolving and paying interest. So on average, a $100 transaction in the US ends up generating 5.5% in revenue from consumers and merchants alike. That is obviously not sustainable. Longer term, despite the points or without points or with points, it doesn't matter. The points doesn't offset 5.5%.
Sure, of course not.
Yeah.
But it sounds like stable coins and their proliferation will integrate with Klarna, and that will. You guys want to add efficiency, and then the stable coins could also maybe add efficiency with.
And they do already. I mean, I think I was a little bit of a crypto skeptic, more because I always go back and ask myself, how's this helping my mom? And when Bitcoin came along and all these things 10 years ago, I tried. My mom was like, "Wow, do you want to And she was like, "What is this? I can't use it, and it's costly, And then yeah, but it can replace the role of central banks." And my mom was like, "I don't care, I don't care. A central bank sounds good to me. What do you mean?" So there was none of that. But a year ago, I was encouraged by Michael, my chairman, and I spoke to Andrew from Sequoia, who's on our board, and said, let me introduce you to some of the next generation of stablecoin companies. I talked to a few of them, and I was like, wow, now I can see the value. It's clear that this makes moving money cheaper, more efficient, lower cost, saves value for customers, very clear. And so then I was like, obviously now Klarna needs to, find out how we are going to utilize these technologies or provide them to our customers so that, we can generate value for them, for sure.
Well, you mentioned AI. We can't do a conversation without talking about AI. Obviously, Upstart's readers had a couple AI questions.
Yeah.
I think, starting from the most interesting place, you took a very public stance about Klarna using customer service and some maybe basic use cases of AI internally. What would be the coolest or most fun use of AI inside Klarna that you haven't tweeted about, or that isn't obvious, like customer support?
I haven't tweeted yet, but I did tell this story to some of our investors. So it may sound a bit boring, but I think it's actually revolutionizing. That is that we have spent a lot of time at Klarna, because as a big company, you'll have tons of technical systems We bought into Jeff Bezos' microservices dream, so we have too many freaking microservices that does tons of things. And there's, it's just big and complex. But now we've been working the last few years to hook it all up, to make sure that like we have an internal knowledge base that is really accurate in describing all that. And I recorded this video for our employees just the other week, where I had gotten a text message from Klarna. And the text message from Klarna was, I can actually read it to you. And this was me as a customer of Klarna, right? And it was, here we go, from Klarna, okay. So, the text message reads, your payment of $250 for OpenAI failed. Make a payment now. And I was like, seriously? Is this how we communicate with our customers? What is this text message? I've never seen it. It looks horrendous, right? It's like, we can't talk to customers like that. And so, historically what would have happened, I would have gone to Slack, I would be like, CEO angry, CEO's gotten bad text message. And then like chief product officer would be like, uh-oh, CEO angry, let's go and fix this.
Yeah,
and then run around in the organization trying to find what is the team, and where is it, and who owns that, and how do we change it, and whatever. And then it would have been weeks and weeks. So now what I did, I went into Cursor. I opened up Cursor. Cursor is connected to our Klarna MCP, which is connected to our knowledge base. I went in and I said, hey, go and research, where is this, which repository is this code? Like, where is this? Goes down, takes a few minutes, comes back. And I screen recorded it for all our employees. Comes back, and it says, I found the repo, it's called Echo. This is where we store most of our text messages. Okay, fine. I go and download a repository from Bitbucket. We want to move to GitHub, but we're still on Bitbucket. And so I downloaded it. And then I told Cursor, I was like, hey, go and find me where this text message is in the repo. Goes in, searches, said, I found it. Here it is, the text message. And I was like, okay, fine. Now change it, make it better, but please don't add any like complex features and stuff, because the engineers are going to yell and tell me it's a security risk. So just fix the copy, please. But please read our brand guidelines, which are also in the knowledge base, and read like how we're supposed to sound and feel like Klarna, and rewrite it. It's like, I rewritten it, I read it, much better text message. It's like, okay, can you help me commit it? Yes, I can. Done. Committed. Up for review. Can go live. Took me 7 minutes. End to end. And then I shared it with the whole organization and said, this is what we're going to be doing now. And all of you business people who haven't been coding are going to learn how to do this.
Was your team excited or terrified?
Super excited. People
like, why is our CEO in the code?
Yeah, exactly. Why is he there? What's he doing? No, I got a lot of positive reflections from people. And I think a lot of people pinged me. And some engineers pinged me and said, of course we know that this is a simple fix, but historically we felt we needed to go to marketing department and ask for the copy or ask for approval from the branding people or whatever. But we can't work that way. It turns out that a lot of the like simple fixes, they're not simple in a large organization because of the number of people that are involved that want to have an opinion, and that slows us down, right? So to me, like very clear cut, like this isn't something we've talked about yet, but I think it's going to accelerate us further now. We empower everyone. Like I don't even know how much internal tools we'll have. Like people used to be like, oh, I am responsible for efficiency of sales, so I want a dashboard that looks like this so I can track the sales guys. It's like, hey man, just go to Cursor, write what you want, code it on top of the back end, and you get whatever you think is,
over time, would an agent be approving that, or do you think a human at some point that needs to get to the right human so that you don't have a rogue junior employee?
No, exactly, right? So and you'll still have a lot of code. I mean, if it's production, if I'm going to touch like payments or whatever, obviously be much more careful. For internal tooling, like who cares, right? Like as long as it's internally used and whatever. And that's why I have been quite honest about the fact that I think some SaaS companies are going to struggle in that environment unless they really embrace this and find a way to reimagine their businesses, right? Because it's just so much more flexible, right? Some dashboard that some person built for you, and you're like, I don't like it. I want to click there and get a different, and you're like, go to Cursor, like add a button, fix it, change the call, whatever. Like
that was actually gonna be the other question. It's just the previous startup that I have been looking into, very small, is a new lab trying to do actually emotionally savvy video avatars. Like trying to do a new model that is a different kind of model so it can actually in real time emotively respond, which could unlock internal and external use cases. Having gone through sort of the journey of how much should be AI versus humans more than most, Does that excite you? Do you want to have sort of
for
AI
sure.
workers?
No, I won't. I think, again, like people, here media has so much simplified what we were actually saying on this topic. The truth is the following, is that when I have the chance to sit down and people ask me like a conversation like this, first and foremost, Klarna was never great at like IVR systems and press 1 and press 2. Meaning, when we launched AI customer service, the questions that we were letting humans deal with were very basic. It was like, did you receive my payment? Yes. Thank you. Like, that's not hard to give to an AI.
Sure.
Right? An IVR or an FAQ could solve that. But we hadn't focused on it as much. So that's why it was so much more low-hanging fruit when we rolled out. With that said, though, I would also say it's a benefit, because I talk to some large companies that says, yeah, but the problem is our customer service cost per errand is $1, and the call to API to ChatGPT or OpenAI is so expensive, so I can't like make this work economically. And I was like, yeah, I'm not that efficient. Like we haven't, like we're not at that level of efficiency. So, but the benefit is once we roll it out for simpler stuff, the key thing is that then we started seeing, well, actually we learned how to do it for more advanced stuff. So it's been very good. However, what we also recognized very early on was both there's a general society backlash against AI. So if you're only going to offer people, I actually think it's a little bit like, to me it's a little bit like, I'm sure that historically when people were doing shoes, in every city there was a shoemaker who was doing shoes. And then came factories. People thought that the thing from the factory was much more shiny and high quality. Today, you travel to Italy to meet the local leather guy.
Pushback, yeah.
And so the point is that what's human made, human crafted, is actually valued higher today than what's machine are doing, right?
And that resonates with me, because with Upstarts, AI will be able to summarize any newsletter. It already can. It can generate news summaries for you. So if all you want is raw information, you probably don't need a journalist for that. But for real questions like this or conversations with founders, that's why I have to be really focused on being the craftsman there as well. I want to get to 2 final questions from readers. You're a busy guy this week. First is, a lot of CEOs will say cliches like, it's only day 1 or we're just getting started. You have done this for a long time. So how has your job as CEO changed the most recently? And is this something that you actually want to be doing for the rest of your career? Or how do you kind of re-engage yourself constantly?
So I was complaining a little bit the other day because I said our roadshow has been a little bit too smooth sailing. And I said Klarna has always been drama. And I sometimes when we were going through our board dramas or whatever, I felt like we're in Succession season 6.
Okay.
And
is that the one where they bring in the handsome Swedes?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. Good point. And then I was complaining to Philippa. I said, like, look, I just feel like, where's the drama in this season? We're going to lose ratings. It's going too easy. So I want Max Levchin to ride in with one of my co-founders and do like a hostile takeover just before the IPO, and then I'll be like fending it off, No, I think seriously speaking, the truth is, for me personally, on a very personal level, I realized many years ago that I had enough money to be able to go and sit under a tree in Thailand, or whatever. It doesn't excite me. This excites me, the journey with Klarna, and also to some degree maybe to redeem myself from what you said about late fees and all that. I wanted to not leave the company being that, but turn it into something that was positive. It is, to me, a interesting challenge because it's difficult, because it's financial services and credit and all that. So there's something exciting to that. But also, I just love, I still personally believe this could be a Google. It could be a $1 trillion company. That's what I personally believe. That's what motivates me to come into office, because I still see that opportunity. I still see the things we could be doing for our customers, the things we could be improving. And if I would genuinely not believe that anymore, then I would probably consider doing something else.
Okay.
But as long as I believe that, I want to continue. And the drama, to some degree, as I said, once I was interviewed by a journalist and he started being on live TV extremely aggressive and started like yelling, "Oh, your WeWork, you're gonna fail. This is the end." I was just sitting there. I almost couldn't take it seriously because it was like so aggressive, and I was just like, "Okay, what do I do now?" I went out from the interview. I sat in the car, drove to my office, and I put on "Under Pressure" by Queen, and I relished the moment. I relished the moment because if you want to play Champions League or NBA finals or whatever it is, you realize you're going to be on immense pressure when you're standing there on that day. But that's what you signed up for. This is what I've signed up for. I want to be in these situations. I want to experience these difficulties and these challenges. This is what I find fantastic and interesting and stimulating. And I hope to be able to do a good job and cope with them in a good way as much as I can.
That flows into the last question, which is, last week Richard Branson said that he doesn't really like to invest in other founders or startups. He just wants to build new companies all the time. And obviously he's tinkered with a lot of things. You different, doing Klarna for a long time, and you've invested and helped other startups along the way.
Yeah.
How did I know you have a fund, Flat Capital, with your wife. Is that something that is still a focus for you, and you want to invest in startups there, or how are you trying to work with the next generation?
My number one focus and priority is Klarna, but I found Flat has been fun. We've been doing odd things with Flat that you're not expecting, because what people don't know is actually it's publicly traded in Sweden, so you can go and buy Flat stock. Flatten was a early investor in OpenAI at $30 billion valuation. We did Perplexity at $700 million. We've done 11 labs.
Our reader was excited to see you did a defense investment recently.
We did a defense investment recently. Yeah, so I think it's nice, and the funny thing is they're running it with no fees. We call it the cheapest VC in the world, because there's no carry, there's no management fees. It's just the money that, and it's evergreen. The benefit we have is evergreen, because the company can go in and invest. There's no fund. There's nobody to return to. If people don't like it, they sell the stock on the stock market. So it's a fun, different thing, but it's tiny. It's $300 million in market cap. So it's been doing well. I'm very proud of the team. It's 2 people. 2 people running it, which is quite effective, and that's why they can charge no fees. Because
but is this a chance for you to meet those founders? Do you like to advise founders?
I do. However, always tell founders that look. The way I work as a person, Klarna is my number one priority. So if even if I say I'll support you, what I always say look, I always call you back, but it may take a month.
So I've heard really quick, Jeff Bezos, apparently if he invests in you, you get one dinner.
Yeah.
And you have to decide when you're going to call it in, your one dinner. Sam Walton, similarly, if he personally invests in you, I've heard founders tell me, if you text him any demand, as crazy as it might sound, once a year, he will do his best, connect you to the government or something.
Right.
Do you operate under a similar playbook?
That sounds pretty similar, yeah. I don't have, maybe I can't fix a dinner at the White House for you, but, still, yeah, something like that.
Awesome, cool. Well, thank you for the time, Sebastian. Really fun to hear about the business.
Thank you.